The metal walls of the research ship groaned in the cold darkness of space. Inside the failing vessel, two very different beings sat in what remained of the bridge, watching their lives slowly slip away. Lyra Moonwhisper pressed her pointed ears against the wall, listening to the dying sounds of the ship's systems. Her long silver hair floated around her pale face in the weak gravity. She had lived for 300 years, but she had never felt so helpless. Across from her, Zara the Saurian warrior kept her yellow eyes fixed on the door. Her green-scaled skin looked almost black in the dim emergency lighting. Her powerful hands gripped a broken piece of metal like a weapon, even though there was nothing left to fight. The 7-foot-tall reptilian female had defeated countless enemies in battle, but she could not fight the cold vacuum of space that waited outside their dying ship. 3 days ago, everything had been different. The research team had made the discovery of a lifetime on the remote planet below. Quantum crystals that could power entire cities lay hidden in ancient caves. The mixed crew of scientists from different worlds had worked together to gather the precious stones. Lyra had used her ancient elven knowledge to locate the crystals, while Zara had protected the team from dangerous cave creatures. But greed had poisoned their success. The ship's captain, a Centaurian named Vex, had made a secret deal with criminals. In the middle of the night cycle, Vex and his loyal crew members had stolen all the quantum crystals. They had locked Lyra and Zara in the bridge and damaged the ship's engines. Then they had escaped in the shuttle, leaving the two aliens to die slowly in the broken vessel. Now the air was getting thin and cold. The ship's power cells were almost empty. The heating system had failed 12 hours ago. Lyra pulled her research coat tighter around her thin frame, but it did little to stop the growing chill. Her breath came out in small white clouds that quickly disappeared in the recycled air. Zara seemed less affected by the cold, but even her tough reptilian body was starting to slow down. She had stopped pacing hours ago, and now sat still to save energy. Her natural body heat was dropping as the ship grew colder. Soon she would enter a hibernation state that might keep her alive longer, but it would also leave her helpless. Ciao. Two women had never been friends. Elves and Saurians had fought wars for thousands of years. Their peoples saw each other as enemies from opposite sides of the galaxy. Elves believed in magic and wisdom and long, careful thought. Saurians valued strength and honor and quick action. But trapped together in their metal tomb, old hatred seemed less important than survival. Lyra tried once more to use her elven magic to fix the ship. She closed her green eyes and reached out with her mind, searching for the flow of energy that connected all living things. But space was empty and cold and dead. Her magic, which could heal wounds and grow plants and speak to animals on living worlds, was useless here among the stars. She opened her eyes and shook her head. Zara watched. The elf's failed attempt without comment. The warrior had already tried everything her people had taught her. She had examined every piece of equipment, looking for something to repair or weapon to use. She had even tried to break through the reinforced door with her bare hands. But the ship had been built to keep dangerous things inside as much as outside. Her strength meant nothing against walls designed to contain explosive experiments. The distress beacon still worked, sending out its weak signal to any ship that might be listening. But they were in the neutral zone, far from the regular shipping lanes. Most vessels avoided this area because of pirates and dangerous radiation fields. The beacon had been calling for help for 3 days without any answer. Time was running out. The ship's computer estimated they had maybe 6 hours of breathable air left. After that, they would slowly suffocate as carbon dioxide built up in the recycling system. It would not be a pleasant death, but it would be better than freezing, or being sucked out into space if the hull finally cracked under the stress. Lyra looked at her unlikely companion and made a decision that surprised them both. She moved across the small bridge and sat down next to the large reptilian warrior. Zara tensed for a moment, her fighting instincts still strong even in their hopeless situation, but then she relaxed and allowed the elf to sit beside her. They did not speak the same language perfectly, but they had learned enough of each other's words during the research mission to communicate basic ideas. Lyra told Zara about her home world, with its great trees that reached into the clouds and cities built from living wood. Zara described her desert planet, where her people hunted great beasts under twin suns and carved their histories into stone monuments. As they shared their stories, something unexpected happened between them. The ancient hatred between their peoples began to fade, replaced by understanding and even friendship. They were no longer an elf and a saurian waiting to die. They were just two people, far from home, facing the end together. The ship shuddered as another system failed. The lights flickered and went out for several seconds before the emergency power kicked in. When the dim red glow returned, both women knew they did not have much time left. They held on to each other for warmth and comfort as the cold metal tomb carried them slowly through the endless night of space. Neither of them expected rescue. In this forgotten corner of the galaxy, death seemed certain. But somewhere out in the darkness, a small human salvage ship had picked up their fading distress signal, and everything was about to change. Jake Carter wiped the grease from his hands and stared at the blinking signal on his scanner. The human salvage operator had seen many distress beacons in his 15 years of working the Outer Rim, but this one was different. It was weak and far away, coming from deep in the neutral zone where smart people did not go. His weathered face showed the lines of a man who had lived hard among the stars, but his brown eyes still held the spark of someone who cared about others. Maya looked up from the engine she was repairing and saw Jake studying the signal. The young human engineer was the only crew member Jake could afford to keep on his small salvage ship. She was smart and good with her hands, but more importantly, she shared Jake's belief that you helped people when they needed it, even if it cost you money. "That beacon is 3 days old," Maya said, reading the data over Jake's shoulder. "Whatever ship sent it is probably dead by now, and look where it is. That area has radiation storms and pirate gangs. We could lose the Wanderer just trying to reach it." Jake nodded, but did not look away from the screen. His ship was old and patched together from spare parts, but it was home. The Wanderer had carried him through dozens of dangerous salvage jobs, and he trusted it to keep him alive. But Maya was right about the dangers. The neutral zone was called neutral because nobody was strong enough to claim it. That made it perfect for criminals and desperate people. "Someone is out there dying," Jake said in his quiet voice. "Maybe they have been waiting for help for days. Maybe they are looking at their scanner right now, hoping someone will come." He turned to look at his young friend. "If it was us sending that signal, would you want people to ignore it because it was dangerous?" Maya sighed and went back to her repairs. She had worked with Jake long enough to know that look in his eyes. The man could not walk away from people in trouble, even when the smart thing was to mind his own business. It was one of the things she liked about him, even when it scared her. Other species in the galaxy thought humans were crazy for taking risks to help strangers. The proud Saurian Empire believed you only helped your own clan members. The wise elves thought careful planning was more important than quick action. Most alien races had learned to be cautious over thousands of years of civilization, but humans were new to space travel, and they still acted on emotion instead of logic. Jake plotted a course for the distress signal and fired up the Wanderer's engines. The ship shook and rattled as it always did, but it moved forward steadily, through the dark space. Maya finished her repairs and came to sit in the co-pilot seat. She did not argue with Jake's decision, but she kept the weapon systems ready and watched the scanner for trouble. It took them 8 hours to reach the source of the signal. What they found floating in space was a mid-sized research vessel with dark windows and no signs of life. The ship looked like it had been damaged in several places, with scorch marks on the hull that could have come from weapons fire or system failures. "I am reading 2 life signs," Maya reported, studying her instruments. "Very weak, but still alive. The ship's power is almost gone, and the air is nearly used up. If we are going to help them, we need to move fast." Jake maneuvered the Wanderer carefully alongside the dead research ship. In space, even small mistakes could kill everyone involved. He extended the docking tube and connected it to the other ship's emergency airlock. The process took 20 minutes of careful work, but finally he had a secure connection. "Stay here and keep the engines ready," Jake told Maya as he put on his emergency suit. "If pirates show up, we might need to leave quickly." He grabbed his toolkit and a portable life support unit, then stepped into the airlock. The research ship was cold and dark inside. Jake's helmet light cut through the shadows as he made his way toward the bridge where his scanner showed the life signs. His breath came out in white clouds inside his helmet, and he could see ice forming on the walls where moisture had frozen in the failing air system. When he reached the bridge, Jake found something he had not expected. Two alien women sat huddled, together in the corner, sharing warmth and waiting to die. One was clearly an elf, with the pointed ears and pale skin that made her people famous across the galaxy. The other was a saurian warrior, massive and green-scaled, with the build of someone who could tear a person in half with her bare hands. Both women looked up when Jake's light found them. The elf's green eyes were wide with surprise, while the saurian's yellow gaze was filled with suspicion. Neither of them moved at first, as if they could not believe what they were seeing. Jake quickly checked his translator device and spoke in the common galactic language that most space travelers knew. "I am here to help," he said simply. "My ship is connected to yours. We need to move quickly." The elf, who introduced herself as Lyra, struggled to stand on shaking legs. She had been close to death, and Jake could see the relief in her eyes. But she also looked confused, as if she could not understand why a human would risk his life for strangers. The saurian warrior, Zara, was more direct in her suspicion. She looked Jake up and down with obvious doubt, taking in his simple clothes and basic equipment. To her eyes, humans were a young and primitive species that had barely learned to travel between stars. The idea that one of them would rescue her was almost insulting. "Why did you come?" Zara demanded in her rough voice. "What do you want from us?" Jake was used to this reaction from other species. Humans had a reputation for being emotional and unpredictable, which made many aliens nervous. "I want to keep you from dying," he said with a small smile. "Is that okay with you?" As he helped the two women move through the dark corridors toward his ship, Jake noticed how they watched him. Lyra seemed fascinated by his calm efficiency in the emergency. Elves prided themselves on being logical and wise, but Jake was solving problems through pure instinct and experience. Zara kept studying him like he was a puzzle she could not figure out. When they reached the Wanderer, Maya was waiting with hot drinks and warm blankets. She helped the two aliens get comfortable while Jake sealed the airlock and prepared to leave. But as the Wanderer pulled away from the dead research ship, all four of them knew this was just the beginning of their problems. Lyra and Zara told their story in broken pieces, explaining about the stolen quantum crystals and the betrayal by their own crew. Jake listened carefully and realized they were not just refugees from a failed mission. They were witnesses to a crime that someone would kill to keep secret. As if summoned by his thoughts, Maya's scanner suddenly lit up with new contacts. 3 ships were approaching fast from different directions, and their weapons signatures showed they were not coming to help. "Pirates," Maya said grimly, "and they look like they mean business." Jake looked at his 2 passengers and made another decision that proved humans were different from other species. Instead of surrendering or running away, he smiled and reached for the Wanderer's controls. "Let's see what this old ship can do." The 3 pirate ships moved in perfect formation, cutting off every escape route from the Wanderer. Their sleek hulls gleamed with weapon ports and armor plating that made Jake's patched salvage ship look like a child's toy. The lead vessel was twice the size of the Wanderer, with enough firepower to blast them into atoms. Maya's hands flew over the scanner controls as she tried to identify their attackers. "The big one is a Centaurian destroyer," she reported with fear in her voice. "The other 2 are fast attack ships. Jake, we cannot fight these guys. We should surrender and hope they just want to rob us." But Lyra was shaking her head frantically. "The lead ship belongs to Captain Vex," she whispered. "He is the one who betrayed us and stole the quantum crystals. If he captures us, he will kill us to keep his secret safe." Zara's warrior instincts were fully awake now. The big saurian woman studied the tactical display with professional interest, but even she could see they were badly outmatched. 3 against 1, and they have superior weapons," she growled. "This human ship cannot possibly win a direct fight." Jake listened to their warnings while his hands moved over the Wanderer's controls. Most people in the galaxy would have given up already, but humans had a reputation for doing impossible things when their backs were against the wall. "You are right," he said calmly. "We cannot fight them head-on, so we won't." The communication system crackled to life, and Captain Vex's cold voice filled the bridge. The Centaurian's 4 arms were visible on the screen as he leaned forward in his command chair. His insect-like features showed no emotion as he spoke. "Human vessel, you are carrying stolen property that belongs to me." Vex lied smoothly. "Surrender, the elf and the saurian, and you will be allowed to leave unharmed." Jake looked at Lyra and Zara, then back at the screen. "Sorry, but my passengers don't want to go with you. Maybe you should try asking nicely next time." Vex's compound eyes narrowed with anger. "You do not understand the situation, Primitive. Those criminals are wanted for theft and murder. I am authorized to use force to capture them." "Funny thing. About criminals," Jake replied with a grin that made Maya nervous. "They usually run when the shooting starts. Let's see how fast your ships really are." Without warning, Jake slammed the Wanderer into a sharp turn that threw everyone against their seats. The old salvage ship groaned under the stress, but it responded to his commands like a living thing. Instead of trying to run away in a straight line, Jake dove toward the nearby asteroid field that filled this part of space. The pirate ships followed immediately, their superior speed allowing them to close the distance quickly. Laser beams flashed past the Wanderer's hull as the attackers opened fire. Jake twisted and rolled the ship through the incoming weapons fire, using every trick he had learned in 15 years of dangerous salvage work. "You are insane," Zara said, but there was something like admiration in her voice. The Saurian warrior understood courage, even when it came from an unexpected source. Lyra held onto her seat and watched Jake work. The human pilot was not following any logical plan that she could see. Instead, he seemed to be making decisions based on pure instinct, reacting to threats before they fully developed. It was completely different from the careful elven approach to problems, but somehow it was working. The Wanderer plunged into the asteroid field with the pirates close behind. Here, Jake's knowledge of salvage work gave him an advantage that the military-trained pirates did not expect. He knew how to navigate through floating debris and dangerous rocks because he did it for a living. The larger pirate ship had to slow down to avoid colliding with the asteroids. Its heavy weapons were designed for open space battles, not precision shooting in a crowded field. But the 2 smaller attack ships stayed close to the Wanderer, their pilots skilled enough to match Jake's desperate maneuvers. Maya worked frantically at her station, rerouting power from non-essential systems to boost their engines and shields. "I can give you more speed, but not for long," she called out over the noise of straining machinery. "This old ship was not built for this kind of stress." Jake nodded and pushed the Wanderer even harder. He led the chase through narrow gaps between spinning rocks, using the asteroids themselves as cover from enemy weapons. When one of the attack ships got too close, he suddenly reversed direction and flew straight at it, forcing the pirate pilot to swerve away or risk a head-on collision. "Humans are completely crazy," the frustrated pirate captain radioed to his companions. "No sane pilot would try that maneuver." But Jake's apparent madness had a method behind it. He was not just running randomly through the asteroid field. He was leading his pursuers toward something specific that his salvage work had taught him to recognize. Deep in the field was an old mining station, abandoned for 50 years, but still partially intact. When the mining station appeared on their screens, Lyra gasped in understanding. "You are going to use the station's defenses," she said with growing respect. "But how did you know they were still active?" "Salvage work teaches you to notice things," Jake explained while dodging another volley of laser fire. "That station still has power readings, which means someone maintained it recently. Pirates probably use it as a base, which means it has automatic defenses to keep other people away." As if responding to his words, the ancient mining station suddenly came alive with weapon batteries and defense drones. The automated systems did not care who was approaching. They just knew that multiple ships were flying too close to the station, and they responded the way they were programmed to 50 years ago. The 2 attack ships following the Wanderer flew straight into the defensive fire before they realized what was happening. One ship took heavy damage and had to retreat with smoke pouring from its engines. The other tried to fight the defense drones but was quickly overwhelmed by superior numbers. Captain Vex's destroyer was too far back to get caught in the same trap, but he had lost his escort ships. Now it was just his heavily armed vessel against Jake's small salvage ship, but the odds had changed dramatically. In the confined space near the mining station, the destroyer's size worked against it. Clever human. Vex admitted over the radio. "But this only delays the inevitable. I will follow you across the galaxy if necessary. You cannot hide from me forever." Jake looked at his passengers and crew, seeing determination in their faces, despite the danger they faced. "Maybe not," he said, "but I bet we can make you wish you had picked an easier target." The chase was far from over. Captain Vex had resources and connections that reached across multiple star systems. He could call in favors from criminal organizations and corrupt officials. The quantum crystals were worth enough money to buy entire fleets of warships. But Jake had something that Vex did not understand. He had people who trusted him and were willing to fight beside him. As the Wanderer escaped from the asteroid field and jumped to hyperspace, Jake began planning their next move. The hunt across the stars had begun, and the human salvage operator intended to make it as difficult as possible for their enemies. 3 weeks had passed since their escape from the asteroid field, and the Wanderer was running low on fuel and supplies. Jake had kept them moving through the outer systems, never staying in one place long enough for their enemies to track them down. But he knew they could not run forever. The ship was hiding in the shadow of a gas giant when Maya picked up an encrypted message on a frequency that most people did not know existed. The signal was weak and coded in the special language that independent traders used to communicate with each other away from government listening posts. "Someone wants to meet us," Maya reported, studying the decoded message. "A trader named Lisa, who claims she has information about the quantum crystals. She says she knows who is really behind the conspiracy." Zara was immediately suspicious. The Saurian warrior had grown more protective of the group during their weeks together, and she did not trust strangers. "It could be a trap," she warned. "Captain Vex has enough money to buy many people." But Lyra had been thinking about their situation from every angle, using her centuries of elven wisdom to analyze their options. "We need allies," she said quietly. "We cannot fight this conspiracy alone. We know the stolen crystals are being used for something bigger than simple profit, but we do not know what." Jake made the decision to meet with the mysterious trader. They arranged to rendezvous at an old space station on the edge of nowhere, the kind of place where people minded their own business and asked no questions. The Wanderer docked carefully, with Maya keeping the engines ready for a quick escape. Lisa turned out to be a small, blue-skinned alien with large, dark eyes and delicate features that made her look almost fragile. But there was something about the way she moved and spoke that suggested hidden strength. When she shook hands with Jake, he felt a strange tingling sensation that told him she was telepathic. "I have been watching the news feeds," Lisa said as they gathered in the station's cantina. "Captain Vex and his criminal friends are telling everyone that you kidnapped 2 alien scientists and stole valuable research materials. They have bounty hunters looking for you across a dozen systems." Jake was not surprised by this news, but it still made him angry. "So now we are the criminals," he said with bitter humor. "I guess that makes it easier for them to hunt us." Lisa studied each member of their group with her large eyes, and Jake had the feeling she was reading more than just their expressions. "The quantum crystals you witnessed being stolen are not just valuable," she said slowly. "They are components for a weapon system that could destroy entire planets. Several governments have been trying to get their hands on them for years." The revelation hit the group like a physical blow. Lyra had known the crystals were important, but she had never imagined they could be used for something so terrible. Zara's warrior instincts were fully alert now, recognizing a threat that went beyond personal revenge. "Who is behind this?" Maya demanded. "If governments are involved, then we are dealing with more than just pirates and criminals." Lisa looked around carefully, even though they were alone in the cantina. "There is a secret alliance between certain military leaders from different species," she explained. "They are afraid of how fast humans are advancing in technology and influence. They want to prevent Earth from becoming a major power in the galaxy." Jake felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's poor heating system. "They want to use the weapon against Earth?" "Not directly," Lisa said. "But they plan to use it to destroy human colonies and trading posts throughout the outer systems. They want to make your people afraid to expand into space. They think they can force humanity back to your home planet." The conspiracy was bigger and more dangerous than any of them had imagined. It was not just about stolen crystals or personal revenge. It was about the future of humanity in the galaxy. Zara was the first to speak after the shocking revelation. "This goes against everything the Saurian Empire claims to believe," she said with disgust. "Honor means protecting the weak, not destroying them out of fear." Lyra nodded slowly, her ancient wisdom helping her see the larger picture. "The elves have made similar mistakes in the past," she admitted. "We have often feared change instead of embracing it. This conspiracy will hurt innocent people from many species, not just humans." Jake looked at his unlikely allies and felt something he had not experienced in years. For the first time since this adventure began, he was not just trying to survive or help people in trouble. He was part of something bigger, a group of individuals from different worlds who were willing to stand up for what was right. "What do we need to do?" he asked Lisa. The telepathic trader smiled for the first time since they had met. "The conspirators are planning to test their weapon on a remote human mining colony called New Haven," she explained. "The attack is scheduled for next week. If we can warn the colonists and gather evidence of the plot, we might be able to stop it." But even as they made plans to travel to New Haven, Jake knew they were walking into another trap. Captain Vex and his allies would be expecting them to try something heroic. The odds against success were enormous. Maya was thinking the same thing. "4 people against a military conspiracy," she said with a shake of her head. "We are either very brave or completely insane." "Why not both?" Jake replied with the kind of grin that had gotten him into trouble his entire life. As they prepared to leave the space station, Jake realized how much had changed since he first picked up that distress signal. Lyra was no longer the condescending elf who saw humans as primitive barbarians. She had learned to value human intuition and emotional courage. Zara was no longer the proud warrior who thought strength was the only thing that mattered. She had discovered that true honor meant protecting others, regardless of their species. Maya had grown from a young engineer into a confident leader who could think quickly under pressure. And Lisa, despite being new to their group, had already proven she was willing to risk her life to do the right thing. They were no longer just a human salvage operator and his passengers. They had become a team, bound together by shared danger and mutual respect. Each of them brought different skills and knowledge to their mission, but more importantly, they trusted each other completely. The journey to New Haven would take 3 days through some of the most dangerous space in the galaxy. They would have to avoid military patrols, pirate gangs, and bounty hunters who were all looking for them. And at the end of their journey, they would face enemies with superior weapons and numbers. But as the Wanderer jumped into hyperspace, carrying its crew of unlikely heroes toward their most dangerous mission yet, Jake felt something he had not experienced in a long time. He felt hope. The mining colony of New Haven looked peaceful from space, its small cluster of buildings and extraction equipment scattered across the surface of a rocky moon. 3,000 human colonists lived and worked there, completely unaware that a secret weapon was being prepared to destroy their home. Jake guided the Wanderer to a landing site hidden behind a ridge of mountains, keeping the ship out of sight from the colony's sensors. The team had spent the last 3 days planning their mission, but they all knew that plans rarely survived contact with reality. "The weapon will be fired from Captain Vex's command ship," Lisa explained one final time as they prepared their equipment. "It uses the quantum crystals to focus energy beams that can crack a planet's crust. The colonists will have no warning and no chance to escape." Maya finished checking the recording devices they would use to gather evidence of the conspiracy. "If we can get proof that this is a planned attack and not an accident, we can send it to every news service in the galaxy. Even corrupt governments will have trouble ignoring that kind of evidence." Zara tested her weapons one last time. The Saurian warrior had insisted on carrying enough firepower to fight a small army, but Jake knew their success would depend more on cleverness than on raw strength. "The attack is scheduled for tomorrow at dawn," she said grimly. "We have less than 18 hours to stop it." Lyra had been using her elven abilities to study the colony's layout and identify key locations. "The communication center is heavily shielded," she reported. "If we can reach it, we can send our evidence to the rest of the galaxy before the conspirators can stop us." As they made their final preparations, Jake noticed how much his companions had changed during their weeks together. Lyra no longer spoke to him with the condescending tone that elves usually used for humans. Instead, she listened to his ideas with genuine respect. Zara had stopped questioning his decisions, and now followed his lead without hesitation. Even Maya seemed different, more confident and capable than when this adventure had started. The young engineer had grown into a true partner, someone Jake could depend on in any crisis. But their mission almost ended before it began. As they approached the colony on foot, hidden sensors detected their presence and alarms began to sound. Captain Vex had arrived early and set up a perimeter around New Haven. Armed soldiers in combat armor emerged from concealed positions surrounding the small team. "Surrender immediately," a voice called out through amplified speakers. "You are outnumbered and outgunned. Resistance is futile." Jake looked at his friends and saw determination in their faces despite the hopeless situation. They had come too far and learned too much to give up now. "Any ideas?" he asked quietly. Zara was already calculating angles of attack, but even her warrior skills could not overcome such overwhelming odds. Lyra was reaching out with her elven senses, looking for any advantage they could use. Maya was studying her scanner, hoping to find a weakness in their enemies' positions, but it was Lisa who provided the unexpected solution. The telepathic trader had been quiet during their approach, but now she stepped forward with a strange smile on her face. "I have been in contact with someone," she said mysteriously. "Help is coming." Before anyone could ask what she meant, the ground began to shake with the vibration of approaching engines. A massive shape descended from the sky, blocking out the stars with its bulk. The newcomer was a Saurian battlecruiser, bristling with weapons and painted in the war colors of a major clan. Captain Vex's soldiers looked up in shock as the huge warship settled into a landing position nearby. Armored warriors poured out of the ship's cargo bays, led by a figure that made Zara gasp in recognition. "General Kresh," she whispered. "My old commander from the Warrior Academy." The Saurian general was even larger than Zara, with scars covering his green hide and the medals of a dozen campaigns decorating his armor. He strode across the battlefield like he owned it, which in a very real sense he now did. "By order of the Saurian High Command," General Kresh announced in a voice that carried across the entire area, "this operation is terminated. Captain Vex, you are under arrest for conspiracy against the galactic peace." The confrontation that followed was swift and decisive. Vex's hired soldiers were criminals and mercenaries who had no interest in fighting a real military force. They surrendered quickly when faced with trained Saurian warriors. Captain Vex himself tried to escape in his command ship, but Jake had anticipated this move. During the confusion of the general's arrival, he had slipped away from the group and made his way to the Wanderer. Now he brought his salvage ship swooping down on the fleeing destroyer, using the same crazy piloting skills that had saved them in the asteroid field. The chase was brief, but spectacular. Jake's small ship danced around the larger vessel like an angry insect, staying too close for the destroyer's main weapons to target him effectively. Meanwhile, General Kresh's battlecruiser moved to block Vex's escape route. Faced with certain capture, the corrupt Centaurian captain made one final desperate move. He activated the quantum crystal weapon, intending to destroy the colony and eliminate all witnesses to his crimes. But Jake had been expecting this as well. As the deadly energy beam lanced down toward New Haven, Jake put the Wanderer directly in its path. The small salvage ship was not designed to withstand that kind of power, but Jake was not trying to stop the beam. Instead, he used the ship's shields to deflect it slightly, sending the destructive energy into empty ground instead of the populated areas. The strain of absorbing and redirecting the weapon's power tore the Wanderer apart. Jake barely had time to activate the emergency systems before his ship broke up around him. He was thrown clear in an escape pod just as the explosion lit up the sky. When the rescue teams reached him, Jake was unconscious, but alive. His ship was gone, destroyed in saving the colony. But 3,000 people were safe because of his sacrifice. The evidence that Lisa and Maya had gathered during the battle was more than enough to expose the conspiracy. News of the plot spread across the galaxy within hours, causing a political scandal that reached the highest levels of government in multiple star systems. General Kresh personally delivered Zara's testimony to the Saurian High Command, where it helped convince the military leadership to distance themselves from the conspiracy. Lyra's evidence was presented to the Elven Council, leading to investigations that uncovered similar plots in other systems. Captain Vex and his surviving allies were arrested and put on trial for their crimes. The quantum crystals were returned to the research facility where they belonged, to be used for peaceful purposes instead of destruction. But the real victory was not in the arrests or the political changes. It was in the new understanding that had grown between the different species during the crisis. Zara chose to leave the Saurian military and work with galactic peacekeeping forces, using her skills to protect innocent people of all species. Lyra returned to her home world, but she brought with her a new appreciation for human courage and the value of acting on principle instead of just logic. Maya became the chief engineer on a new class of ships designed to promote cooperation between species. Lisa continued her work as an independent trader, but now she also served as an unofficial ambassador between different alien communities. And Jake, when he recovered from his injuries, found himself offered positions of honor and authority throughout the galaxy. Governments wanted to make him an admiral or an ambassador. Corporations offered him vast sums of money to work for them. But Jake turned down all the offers and used his reward money to buy a new ship. The Wanderer the Sioux was bigger and better equipped than his old salvage vessel, but it served the same purpose. Jake went back to rescuing people in trouble and salvaging what others had given up for lost. The only difference was that now he had a crew of volunteers from dozens of different species, all of them inspired by the story of a human who had risked everything to save people he had never met. They called him a hero, but Jake knew better. He was just a man who had learned that the most important thing in the galaxy was not how advanced your technology was or how old your civilization was. The most important thing was whether you were willing to help when someone needed it. And in that simple truth, humanity had found its place among the stars.